one of 3 or 4 baby pictures of me. A rarity. Me in the 6th grade. Sandra, the happy bride with her miserable, miserable family in those uncomfortable clothes. Jamie was the best man at his brother Austin's wedding. Brittany was the flower girl, and Brian was the ring beater. Brian, my little soldier. Brittany strikes a pose as we are getting ready to go to church for Easter Sunday. At our neighbor Cindy Reed Miller's wedding, Brian was an usher, Jamie Lynn was a flower girl, and Brittany sang the same song she would later showcase at Jive Records. Sonny's wedding. Sandra and I were so happy when Sonny found Wanda. I'm biased, but Jamie Lynn was the most unscrumptious little girl in the world. Brian and Sandra adored each other. A yearbook photo of Brittany and Justin with my second grade class. Wrecking Balls, Chapter 5. I didn't notice Jamie's drinking problem until it hit me square between the eyes. Jamie always enjoyed a beer here and there, but he didn't start drinking heavily until after Brian was born. He's just been a bad boy, I thought. He'll eventually grow up. That's the way I rationalized his getting drunk on the weekends. It was a different time and place back then. In those days, when someone drank too much, you didn't automatically start thinking about rehab or even getting your loved one with the problem to join Alcoholics Anonymous. You just hoped that person would mature, or that a good heart to heart chat with your local pastor might do the trick. This was my mindset in the spring of 1978, just a little over 2 years after Jamie and I had pledged our undying commitment. In April of the previous year, we had brought our beautiful son home after a harrowing week of wondering if he would live or die, and we looked forward to starting our lives together as a family. Now Brian was about to turn 1. Little did I know that 2 wrecking balls were on their way to crush through my perfect life. One, a tragedy that would instantly alter me for the rest of my life, and the other, an addiction that would eventually reduce my marriage and family to rubble. He's gone. Daddy loved his grandchild so much. There were 3 grandsons, then for him and Mama to dote on. Rick, age 5, Todd, age 3, and little Brian, who was right at that impossibly cute, just staring to walk gummy smile with 2 front teeth stage of a baby just about to graduate into toddlerhood. Daddy got such a kick out for those boys. When Brian was 1 week from his first birthday, and I were at the Mama and Daddy's house as we often were, just visiting with Mama and hanging out in the warmth and security of my childhood home. I can remember being in the bathroom and hearing my uncle Dalton's voice in the front room. He told us that he had to tell us something. Barney's truck rolled over with him in it. My father's brother said, his face stony. He's gone. We were in a state of utter shock as Uncle Dalton gave us what details he could. Apparently, the man who had been with Daddy in the huge milk calibration truck said Daddy tried to jump out when he knew the truck was rolling over and it crushed him. Those trucks are like tanks. Daddy was gone. How could that be? It was the most horrific piece of news ever. Unbelievable, shattering, and devastatingly true. You are probably never ready to lose a parent, but at age 22, with a baby, a husband who drank too much, I was completely overwhelmed. A few days after we laid Daddy in the ground, it was Brian's birthday. We decided Daddy would have wanted us to celebrate the occasion anyway, and goodness knows we needed to divert our attention from the grief we all felt, as if we could. Mama wanted to have the party at her house, probably because she didn't feel like going anywhere else. Bless her heart, she was lost without Daddy. In her 50s, when she was widowed, Mama never remarried. She went about her business living for us kids. She did what Daddy would have wanted her to do. Sonny was just 25, and he had to grow up fast and take over full responsibility for running the dairy. So Brian's birthday party would be at Mama's. It was settled, except for one problem. Jamie thought we should have it as his parents' house, and it would not be budget on the matter. He was positively irritated that we would not change our minds. Who cares whose house it's at? Who cares whose house it's at? I wanted to scream. If you've ever lost a loved one, you know that nothing much matters in the days and weeks and months of that fresh, raw breath. You're just trying to put one foot in front of the other and function the best you can. Jamie disappeared for a week on a bender. No one knew where he was, and frankly, in my state of numbness and almost robotic conditioning of going through the motions of life, I didn't care. If you have lived with an alcoholic, you can relate to the fact that Jamie had a way of creating drama at the very worst times. The very worst times, like my daddy's death. This is textbook alcoholic behavior. To say that I had a little or no support from my husband at this time would be an understatement. At a time in my life when I was more hurting and vulnerable than I could bear, Jamie's absence, emotionally and sometimes physical, compounded my loss, and I don't think I ever really grieved my daddy properly to this day. In our lives together, if someone was sick or even dying, Jamie would find a way to act up and direct everyone's attention to him. He especially drank a lot at any type of seasonal celebration. There was always something happening at Christmas, for example. One year he missed our family gift exchange around the tree. trying to explain where daddy is when it's time to open presents and he's nowhere to be found, and watch the excitement and joy of Christmas fade from the eyes of the child you love. If you have tried it, you know your heart cracked wide open. The nut loosens. After that, the unraveling of our family began in earnest. With very school-soaked episode, our perfect little life began to unstitch, and the knot we had tied with our vows and our love started to work loose, thread by painful thread. In September of that year, a few months after Daddy's death, I went back to college to finish my degree. Mama watched Brian when I was at school, and often when I had to study. I could not have made it without her. Jimmy was not encouraging of my efforts, to say the least. Eventually, in some ways, he was actively working against me, undermining my confidence at every turn and making me feel and sometimes believe that I wasn't smart enough to hold a bachelor's degree. You're too stupid to graduate, he would sneer. How come they don't know that down at the school? How come they don't know that down at the school? His words crushed my spirit. It was a small it was a small miracle that I finished my college education and received my diploma in 1979. Really, anyone who achieves anything of importance while being married to an alcoholic is miraculous. 2-year-old Brian, my sister, and my mom sat in the audience and cheered me on the extraordinary day. We went out for Chinese food afterward and celebrated. No, Jamie wasn't there. He had to work. I think one of the hardest aspects of my lonely achievement was that, at the end of the day, when I'd given all I had to give, there was no one there to hold me tight and say, I'm so proud of you. Or I should say, the person I wanted and needed the affirmation from most wouldn't or couldn't give it to me. At times when things were especially rough, Mama and my sister Sandra wanted me to leave Jamie. The one and only fight my sister and I ever had. It sounds crazy, but Sandra and I literally never argued. Was after one of Jamie's benders. She got so mad and I wouldn't believe him. And I wouldn't leave him. When I look back, I guess I could have ended it a lot sooner and maybe saved myself and my son some heartache. But I wouldn't have my girls, Brittany and Jamie Lynne. Plus, it's almost impossible to look back and say I should have done this or that. At that time, divorcing Jamie did not seem like the right thing to do, because for one thing, I didn't believe in divorce. I still don't. It bothers me when I see people, especially those with children, just throw away their marriages and not look back or have no remorse whatsoever. I love Jamie, and honestly thought if I loved him and stood by him until he grew out of his bad boy phase, we could live our we could live out our days together as a happy family. Plus, the man had the most amazing timing when it came to cleaning up his act. Fast. Just when I thought I couldn't take another pinch or another mean word, suddenly he would change his tune and transform into the ideal husband and father. Jamie kept saying he was going to quit drinking, and most of the time I kept choosing to believe him, though deep down I knew better. At times he would have a blowout over his drinking or some woman I would hear about him flirting with at a bar, we would be estranged, and then I would take him back. I look back now and see that I was probably just as addicted to the problem as he was addicted to alcohol. But in the thick of it, I could see was that I was married with a small child and had to make it work somehow. When Brian was about 4 years old, the threadbare patches of our dysfunctional marriage began to wear too thin. It was Christmas, and again, Jamie found a way to point everyone's minds to him by setting smashed at his uncle's holiday party. When he was missing on Christmas morning, as Brian and I waited by the tree for Daddy to come home and open presents with us, I was done. I had enough of his drinking and disappearing, of his empty promises to quit, and of the roller coaster highs and lows of our life together. I took Brian and packed my bags for Mama's house, and for 2 weeks I held it firm. It was over. We were separated, and I actually filed for divorce. That might have been the end of the Little Spears family, right then and there. But Jamie got hold for himself, just in the nick of time. He did not want to lose Brian and me. Jamie's daddy and stepmother came over to Mama's and begged me to consider taking Jamie back. He really wants to change this time, they pleaded. He will do anything to get you back. And he did, for a time.